Digital Employability Index and National Tracer Registry. Now, the program is designed to scale up to 10,000 participants over time, aiming to connect young people with training, entrepreneurship, and job opportunities. Now, to discuss the key takeaways and opportunities presented by this initiative and what it could mean for the future of Botswana's youth, in a studio this afternoon, I'm joined by Chairperson of Botswana National Youth Council, Millicent Sitaile, and Thabiso Paul, Youth Sector Chairperson at Business Botswana. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on Botswana Television.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
All right. Maybe I'll start with you, Sitaile. Our most precious resource, more valuable than any physical asset. That is what the President said, yes. Referring to young people. What do you make out of this quote?
I think it's again, thank you so much for having me. And personally, I think it's a reflection of what it means to put young people first, what it also means to ensure that the President recognizes that the country is a youthful country, and it's high time more investments are put into this precious goal that the President is seeing. And of course, as we get more into the Sona, we then realize that there are some initiatives that are being made towards empowering young people, towards facilitating young people with employment, and ensuring that young people are contributing to the economy of this country and the development of this country.
Right, but still with you, do you think young people relate with this statement, looking at the unemployment and everything that is going on? Do they feel like most precious than anything that the President has already mentioned?
I think platforms like this are quite important in ensuring that there's communication. We break down that barrier of miscommunication and young people understanding what the Sona is talking about, because it does really speak a lot about the initiatives that are coming that are going to empower young people. For example, the presidential campaign on its own is there to be a coordinating mechanism for youth development. And youth development, it's also linkages to say, we've invested into education, healthcare. How do we then link you to opportunities? Opportunities can be employment, opportunities can be having economic participation, investment there, to say then how do we then communicate the barriers. Living on social media, we are seeing because no one, not no one, but we haven't seen quite a lot of media outlets actually engaging with the Sona itself. These are initiatives exactly.
Most definitely, we'll get into that as we continue with the conversation. Now, coming back to you, Thabiso, from a business perspective, what really stood out to you in President Boko's State of the Nation address, and how do you see the private sector, contributing to the youth-focused development vision he outlined?
Well, I think what stood out for me, ka statement sa ga tautona ke dilo tse di malwa, but pele ta ke leboge sebaka se se mpileng le Batswana ko ga ke ba dumedisa. So se leng gore se dule ko ntlheng ne le go lemoga gore the sectors that I think that are most predominantly having banana more ke sports le creative arts. So go lemoga that sector or that industry amongst others like mining and agriculture is really something that really gives one hope to really see that this sector is now being recognized as an economic contributor. So ka tsela ntse ke sengwe se leng gore ke a se ipelela ibile ke a kgwela tautona le gore mento ga gagwe ka sone mo gongwe be go nna le kganya gore the government would play a facilitating role and leave the private sector to lead the economy. Even prior to the Sona with the NDP 12 draft, it's really looking to have an outcome of attracting cumulatively around over $5 billion US dollars to say, which will be mostly private led. So the private sector will be taking a lead. It's something that really came out from the president speech. But then this is how then I see the private sector taking role and really internalizing if the president is to facilitate and his government is to facilitate a conducive role, or which we say the ease of doing business, which is primarily what I believe in as a private sector advocate, is to say, let's get ready for ourselves to really find the opportunities that are coming with having to have a government that takes a step back and let them lead. So that on its own is an opportunity that if you look into it, it says you already have a resource in human factor. They have the energy and probably a comparative advantage, except for the fact that they don't have the experience themselves. So the private sector should be ready itself to now empower the youth as they contribute together collaboratively to take Botswana to the next level.
Most definitely. I hear you mostly saying the government also that role of producing that conducive environment for the private sector to thrive. Now, the baseline study, maybe you can explain that to us. We're talking about 1,000 promising young people. How will the council, where you're coming from, ensure that the process is very transparent, inclusive, and representative of youth, especially from rural and marginalized areas, and differently, disabled from our community?
Absolutely. I think if we're going to look at a baseline study, if we primarily focus on data, and our data shows they have specific needs as compared to banana that in rural areas as well, who also have their own unique needs. So how do we then ensure that there is a multi-sectoral approach to ensuring development it takes place? So the National Youth Council on its own is working within the Ministry of Youth and Gender Affairs. So we are already in the district. We are already in villages, and what we said had to reach areas, and of course we have young people who are also representatives. So if we're going to speak to again the campaign, we ensure even young people who are young people, because young people in that diversity, how do we then break down information and ensure that the services so as the National Youth Council, as the main coordinating hub for youth development, the state of the nation is to ensure the development and the resources that are there mainly even as we are developing a baseline study because that is something that is quite missing, that young people don't feel represented in these documentation, and the National Youth Policy ensure development, the capacity and skills building and skills training of young people is there and is being recognized. So there's a lot of work that we're doing, but also engaging young people to hear how they are doing, to hear what they want, because so how do we ensure that their needs are catered for, their social welfare is catered for, whether health also is catered for, but them contributing to the economy is catered for.
That's incredible. Most definitely, most of the times we see this, not joint, efforts between the young people and those who are coming with this initiative. So as you are taking this initiative to say we are going to hear them first so that we tailor-make whatever is it that you're coming from to address their basic needs. So the Botswana Digital Employability Index, sounds promising, Tabiso. What role can business play in shaping this tool so it truly reflects markets' demand and help aligns training with real economic opportunities?
Well, I think in everything that needs to come out proper, you have to have a data-driven tool, and this index provides exactly that. And I think for businesses to actually have the best of the outcome what is the index, they should also have part in making it what it's supposed to be. So this is how I think it should be. It should be like, so there shouldn't be much of a disjoint in between the industry itself and the youth themselves. Starting from the development from a lower level, let the industry and the private sector particularly to say have an input in what market needs are needed, because they need those skills at the end of the day. So they should have a part in having to drive the curricula so that by the time they get at a stage where they are job ready, the groundwork has been done. And also what should happen is, like, we are there and the business community is there. So what also needs to come out is they should be available to provide real-time data so that whoever makes the policy is well informed of the exact needs that the private sector needs to actually succeed. So those are kind of things that I think as the private sector positions itself to take a leading role in the economy, they should also have an input in coming up with the data that will actually feed into how the job market will be, how the economy will be like in the future.
Most definitely. Now, many youth programs, as we can bring receipts, have struggled with sustainability in the past. What mechanisms are you going to put in place this time around to make sure that the Presidential Youth Empowerment Campaign doesn't become a short, term project, but rather a long, driven or long-term driver of youth development?
I think sustainability takes effort. As much as we applaud the Sona and the campaign being formed, is that we, like you're saying, we have seen some come and go. But sustainability takes effort of everyone playing the role, from community to national to partners. I think be partners, not being left behind. This campaign was launched 3 months ago, and in the room there were all partners and stakeholders who were involved in ensuring not only is it at community level, but it's also at national, but also international, because sometimes we leave out the young person in the diaspora. And as someone who's just recently come back from international platforms, we're supposed to engage and what opportunities. We found that there are so many opportunities for young people outside this country. So how do such campaigns actually, out of just developing Monana, but ensuring that it's linking Monana to opportunities. So we hope that in terms of sustainability, it will ensure people are engaged and are involved, the right entities are involved and engaged, because how can I let that coordination, everybody working together, it then becomes easy for Monana to benefit in this campaign itself. So I applaud it, but I do also hope that it's not just a plan, and it's just not just a fancy plan, but we want to see the implementation of it. And it benefits Monana Kopel.
All right, we are towards the end of this conversation, but coming to you, Thabiso, the campaign plans to start from 1,000 to 10,000 participants. From a business standpoint, what structures or partnership are necessary to ensure that this scale up leads to tangible job creation and not just training without placements?
Well, I think scaling up is good, but it must have some form of structure, that otherwise we risk seeing ourselves, and particularly the youth, having to train for jobs that we won't even get employment on. So having to have something that starts from 1,000 up until to include 10,000 banana ko gae kana mo Botswana ka kakaretso, it's something that really needs to be having a structure se ska tshwana le bo go nna le bo a private sector placement partnerships, where now the private sector itself will have MOUs and then have spaces that are reserved for the youth to come and get on-the-job training at the end of the day. And also what needs to be done is to have a National Youth Opportunity Portal, which I think it will, at the end of the day, have a united form, or maybe say a readily available data that has the youth with certain specifications that and skills that they have to give to the industry. So if we are the private sector, small or big, at the end of the day, you need to have a pool in which you can easily go into and say, I need an accountant with so and so skills. I need a youthful person with X skills to come and implement this kind of a thing. And usually when you have someone who's been trained on, who's been ready at the right time, at the right place, it's quite easier for the private sector to actually streamline their processes, because the process of finding a person again can be tedious at some points, and also leading the organizations not to get the best out of the candidates that they possibly have. But having to have a pool of at least 10,000 people that you start with, or that you end up with, you now have a larger pool that you can work with. And also from a youth perspective, is also increase the competitiveness, that when knowing that, well, here we are with the same skills, and we have a different offerings that we can actually give to the market. Is something that really, if the private sector positions itself nicely and also get the necessary support from those that are governing and are in a place of making policies, the 10,000 might actually rise to 100,000 if these programs are implemented well.
Most definitely. And that is how we come to the end of this conversation. Unfortunately, we have run clean out of time, but I believe as maybe your last words in 30 seconds, speak to young people. They are valued, or they are more than a valuable asset. What do you say to them as they are listening to the government bringing all these initiatives?
I think for what I can say is, is as we ready ourselves, we need to also have the interest of different capacities. Only into finance, but let's also be broad in accepting what is being given. As much as we're pushing back for what we actually want and need and deserve, let's ensure that we are broadening our interest in different things. As the economy change, we can fit better into the economy.
All right, and that is how we come to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for such insights.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And that is how we come to the end of this conversation. I'm coming right back to say my goodbyes.